My hand froze in midair. I stared at the document in front of me, reading the same line again and again, as though reading it one more time would somehow change what it said. The contract listed Lucas as the sole owner of the company we had built together. Every clause, every asset, his name, not mine. The lawyer slid the pen closer and waited. Across the table, Lucas leaned back with his hands folded, wearing a smile that was a little too relaxed for the occasion. He looked like a man who had already won and was simply waiting for the paperwork to confirm it. I felt the room tilt slightly, not from shock, not from anger, but from a feeling that is difficult to name. The feeling you get when a moment you have been preparing for finally arrives exactly as you imagined. How did my name disappear from my own company? I asked. Lucas shrugged. Business changes fast, my friend. I looked at him. Then I looked back at the document. My heart was pounding, not because I was afraid, but because this was the exact moment I had been waiting for. It started 6 months earlier in a small cafe not far from my apartment, on a Tuesday afternoon when rain hit the windows hard and the place smelled like coffee and warm bread. I had an idea, not a rough one, a fully developed plan I had been working on quietly for nearly a year. A service business targeting a gap in the market that everyone could see but no one had filled properly. The model was simple, the timing was right, and the numbers made sense in a way that most ideas never do. I shared it with Lucas because he was my best friend. We had been close since we were 15, the person I called when things went wrong and celebrated with when they went right. I trusted him completely and without hesitation. He listened carefully that afternoon, asking sharp questions and leaning forward over his cup. "Brother," he said, clinking it against mine, "this is going to make us both rich." I smiled. I felt lucky to have such a partner. I had no idea he was already thinking about how to make it only his. The company launched 2 months after that conversation, and the results came faster than either of us expected. Customers found the service quickly. Word spread. By the 3rd month, we had more demand than we could comfortably manage, and by the 4th, investors were calling us without us reaching out first. It should have been one of the best periods of my life. But somewhere around month 4, I started noticing something I could not quite name. Lucas began holding meetings I was not invited to. Not team calls or supplier discussions, private meetings in his office with the door closed or off-site in places he never mentioned until after the fact. When I asked, he always had a smooth answer ready. Just routine things, nothing you need to worry about. He would wave his hand slightly, the way people do when they want a subject to close without effort. I tried to believe him. He was my best friend. Then one evening, while I was reviewing some financial projections at home, my phone rang. The number was one I had never seen before. I almost didn't answer. I'm glad I did. The voice was quiet, almost a whisper. He introduced himself as Daniel, an accountant who had recently been brought in to help Lucas with some company documentation. He sounded like someone doing something that went against his nature. "You didn't hear this from me," he said, "but I think you need to know what's happening." I set down everything I was holding and went completely still. Daniel explained it carefully. Lucas had been working with a lawyer for several weeks, drafting new company documents that shifted ownership entirely into his name. He had also been meeting privately with investors, the same ones showing interest in our company, and presenting himself as the primary founder and sole decision-maker. The final piece was a signing meeting where I would be handed a contract and expected to sign without reading closely enough to understand what I was giving away. By the time Daniel finished, I had my hand pressed flat against the desk to keep it steady. But I did not call Lucas. I did not confront anyone. I sat in the quiet and thought carefully for a long time. "Thank you," I told Daniel. "I'll handle it." The next morning, I arrived at the usual time, made coffee, and said good morning to the team the way I always did. When Lucas came in, I smiled at him without a trace of anything different in my face. We had a short check-in that morning. I laughed at one of his jokes and suggested he lead a section of an upcoming investor call. He was visibly pleased. He relaxed. Whatever he'd been watching for, he did not find it. That evening, alone at my desk with the door closed, I began building a complete record. Not from panic, not from anger, from a clear, cold understanding that a meeting was coming, and I needed to walk in with more than words. I documented every email, every decision, every draft from before the company existed that showed the business originated with me. I worked for hours without stopping. I was calm in a way I had never been before. Not the calm of someone who has given up, but the calm of someone who has decided what to do and is following it through. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked quietly, making sure Lucas saw nothing different in how I carried myself at the office. I gathered the original concept notes, the early market research I had completed alone, the first financial model built on a spreadsheet in my apartment, and the initial pitch deck written before I showed Lucas a single page. Every piece was dated, time-stamped, and organized clearly. I also contacted the 2 lead investors privately and asked for a short meeting with no agenda shared in advance. I sat across from them and walked through the full history of the company, not with accusations, not with emotion, but with documents and a calm timeline. I let them read and draw their own conclusions. When I finished, one investor set the folder down and looked at me. "Why didn't Lucas share any of this with us?" he asked. I didn't answer. I held his gaze. His question told me where they stood. Before I left that room, I had already agreed with one condition, the condition that would matter more than anything else when the meeting came. While I was building my case quietly, Lucas was finishing his. He had convinced 2 business contacts that I was too emotionally attached to lead the company through its next phase of growth. The framing was careful, not a direct attack, but a picture of someone better suited to ideas than to the harder work of scaling a business. It was clever because arguing against it would make me look exactly like what he was describing. His lawyer had finalized the new legal structure. Under the new documents, I would be reclassified from co-founder and majority owner to a minor operational employee with no ownership stake and no decision-making authority. Lucas would hold full control of everything. The final step was the meeting, lawyers and investors present, the restructuring framed as a strategic move for growth, and the expectation that I would sign the contract before examining anything closely. Lucas had been working on this for 2 months and was confident in every detail. What he did not know was that I had already agreed to attend, and that I had absolutely no intention of walking in unprepared. The meeting was held downtown, in a conference room on the 14th floor of a glass building, the kind of room designed to make everything feel more official and final than it needs to be. Lucas arrived looking sharp and composed. He greeted the investors by name, shook the lawyer's hand, and arranged a neat stock of folders in front of his seat. He was the version of himself he showed the world when he wanted to look like someone who belonged at the head of a table. I arrived 3 minutes early and sat down without saying much. Lucas ran the first portion of the meeting well. He spoke about the company's growth and the need for a cleaner leadership structure to support expansion. He used phrases like strategic clarity and streamlined governance. The investors nodded. The lawyer made notes. I listened and said nothing. When he finally slid the contract across the table toward me, he did it smoothly, casually, the way someone offers something they are certain will be accepted without discussion. "Just sign here," he said. I picked up the document with both hands. Then, slowly and clearly, I began reading it out loud. The room shifted the moment I started reading. I read the ownership clause first, the one that removed my name entirely and transferred full control to Lucas. I read it steadily, at an even pace, without rushing. Every word was clear. Every person in the room could hear exactly what the document said. The investors exchanged a look. Lucas gave a short laugh. "It's just a technical adjustment, standard restructuring language." He waved his hand slightly in that familiar gesture. I set the contract down. Then I opened the folder I had brought and placed it on the table. Inside were the original concept documents, dated and timestamped. Early emails from months before the company launched, showing the idea developing entirely in my name. The market research completed alone. The financial models. At the back, a clear timeline from first idea to first day of business. I turned to the investors. "I'd like you to look at the dates." They looked. The room felt different after that. Not loud, not dramatic, just different in the way a room feels when the truth enters and there is no longer enough space for anything false to stand alongside it. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Lucas pushed back. He leaned forward and his voice took on a harder edge, the way it always did when he felt cornered. "You're making this dramatic," he said. "The company wouldn't be here without my connections, my relationships, my network, my operational work. None of that is in your folder." He was not wrong about his contributions. He had worked hard and made important introductions. But there is a difference between contributing and owning, and that difference was exactly what the documents made plain. One of the investors turned to Lucas and asked a question in a quiet, level voice. "Why didn't you tell us Ryan created the entire concept behind this company?" Lucas opened his mouth. Then he closed it. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. I watched his face, not with satisfaction, not with bitterness, but with the quiet sadness of watching someone you once trusted choose a version of themselves you cannot respect. He had been given many chances to be honest. He chose this instead. There was nothing left for him to say, and I think he knew it. What happened next was something Lucas had not prepared for. I told the room that 2 weeks earlier, I had met privately with the investors. They knew this, they had been there, but I said it aloud so Lucas understood the timeline clearly. During that meeting, I had presented a detailed expansion plan for the company's next stage. It was practical and well-researched. The investors had agreed in principle to fund it, but the agreement carried one specific condition, written into the preliminary term sheet we had signed at the end of that meeting. I slid a copy across the table to Lucas. The condition was clear. I would remain majority owner and CEO. Any change to that structure would void the investment agreement immediately. Lucas picked up the paper. He read it slowly. Then he set it down. The confidence he had carried into the room was completely gone. In its place was something harder to look at. The face of a man watching a plan he believed in collapse with nothing left to stop it. He looked at the investors. They looked back at him without expression. The room was completely still. The older investor spoke first, measured and unhurried in the way people are when they have had difficult conversations before and know how to conduct them. When trust breaks at the leadership level, the entire foundation becomes uncertain. We don't risk our investment on an uncertain foundation. He looked at Lucas directly. You can remain with the company, but going forward, your role will be as an employee, not a partner, not an owner. Lucas didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue. The investors held the future of the company and had already made their decision clear. The lawyer quietly set aside the contract Lucas had spent weeks preparing. The pen he had placed near my side of the table stayed untouched. The meeting that was supposed to end with my signature removing everything I had built ended instead with Lucas sitting very still while the people he had tried to impress watched him from across the table. I sat there and let the moment be what it was. Not quite a victory, more like a correction, the kind that feels necessary rather than satisfying and leaves everyone a little quieter than they arrived. I was the first to stand when the meeting ended. I gathered my folder, thanked the investors, and shook the lawyer's hand. Then I looked at Lucas, really looked at him for the first time in what felt like months. He didn't look like someone who had been caught. He looked exhausted, smaller. The man in that chair looked almost nothing like the person who had clinked cups with me in a cafe and said we were going to be rich together. I had prepared something to say. I had gone over different versions during the 2 weeks of preparation, honest without being cruel, true without being theatrical. But when the moment came, most of what I had planned felt like too much. I said only this: I believed in our friendship more than I believed in this business. That's why this hurts. Then I walked out. I didn't pause, I didn't look back. I pressed the elevator button in the hallway and stood there quietly. I was not happy, I was not angry. I was somewhere in between, the hollow place you reach when something real has ended. The months that followed were quieter than I expected. The company grew under the terms the investors and I had agreed on. Funding came through and we expanded into 2 new markets the original plan had identified. By the end of that year, the business had grown beyond where it stood the morning I walked into that conference room. Lucas stayed on the team. That surprised people. A few colleagues thought I should let him go, that keeping him was an unnecessary complication. But he was capable, and removing capable people out of personal feeling is not a sound way to run anything. He held no authority now. He attended meetings when required and answered to the leaders I had placed above him. He never caused trouble again. He also never apologized. I treated him the same as everyone, fairly, professionally, without referencing the past. I noticed over time that this seemed harder for him than punishment would have been. Not because I planned it that way, but indifference, when deserved, carries a weight that anger never quite matches. About a year later, I was asked to speak at a small event for young entrepreneurs, early-stage founders just starting out, full of energy and honest questions about what building something actually takes. I talked about choosing partners carefully, about documentation, about knowing the full history of your own work before anyone else gets close to it. Near the end, someone asked what I truly learned from what happened with Lucas. I thought before answering. Betrayal shows you 2 things. It shows you who the other person is, and it shows you who you are when tested. The second one matters more. I paused. Stay calm and let the truth do the work. Karma doesn't need noise, it just needs patience and an honest record. The room was quieter after that. I didn't pretend it was clean or painless, but the real outcome wasn't what happened to Lucas. It was that I faced something designed to make me smaller and came through it without becoming someone I didn't recognize. That was the only part worth keeping. If you enjoyed this story, what are your thoughts? Drop your comments, like, and subscribe to this channel.